Hey guys, I hope you're having a beautiful day. I've been cruising around Santa Cruz, riding through the hills on their most affordable model. This is the Gazelle Medeo T9 City HMB Hybrid Mid-Drive Bosch is what that stands for. T9. Anything with the T in it versus a C is talking about a derailleur versus an internally geared hub. And this is a 9-speed, 11 to 36. So you get a pretty good spread on this 38 tooth steel chainring up front with a nice plastic cover. I always love to see that, especially on a mid-step or step-through model. This bike only comes in a mid-step or mixed-E frame, as you see here. And I feel like it's doing a good job of keeping the frame stiff. It doesn't feel like I'm getting this like shimmer or kind of flex feeling, which is great because it does have the rear rack. The battery pack up here is the PowerPack 400 versus a 500, getting a little bit less capacity. But the motor on this bike is the Active Line, which is kind of the weakest one from Bosch. They're entry level, and it does weigh a little bit less, which is nice. You know, I think this is 6.3 pounds and the battery is 5.8. A lot of the other Bosch motors are 7 pounds. Some of the older ones are even 8.8 pounds. So for something to be just 6.3 pounds and have that weight low and center on the frame like we see there, that's perfect. Ideally, all of the weight would be right there. So having a rear rack that's somewhat compromised by the weight of the battery, even if it's just under 6 pounds, 5.8, it does take off some of your carrying capacity. And if you were looking to put like a child seat back here or some pannier bags on the side, you would just want to keep that in mind. It does say it's compatible, so that's sort of a click-on interface. I haven't used that a whole lot, but I think it's pretty popular in Europe. This rack doesn't have a stamp that says the carrying capacity, but most racks that I've seen, they're rated to like 25 kilograms usually, which is about 55 pounds. I would assume this is something like that. You could play it safe and go with just 20 kilograms and maybe 40 pounds. But I just want to give you, kind of some of that feedback. I like that they've got a standard gauge tube right here that has enough clearance below the battery, so you could use some of those click-on, like Ortlieb or whatever, pannier bags. And I like that they got a bungee loop at the bottom, as well as this triple bungee strap, so you could secure like a milk crate on top or a jacket or whatever you want. I also love that they have integrated lights. So these are the AXA Blue Line 2 LED, and it's positioned well. It's protected by the rack, and it's far enough back it shouldn't get blocked by any cargo. Up front, we have the AXA CL35-E 35 Lux. It's got a nice focused beam. You can aim this thing up or down, and it's got side windows. I feel like that's excellent. And those pair with the reflective sidewalls on these tires to give you a nice, just very visible footprint if you're riding in the early morning or later at night. This beautiful gloss olive color. It also comes in a gloss mallard blue, sort of a darker color scheme. And it's fun. I think it's kind of a cute bike. We've reviewed this in the past, and a few things have changed. I think before it had plastic fenders, whereas now it has steel. Steel is going to weigh a little bit more, but maybe be quieter. Plastic can sometimes rattle around. It just feels like it's going to be sturdy, but if it gets scratched, it could rust a little bit. So keep that in mind. The bike used to come in 3 frame sizes. It was like small, medium, and large, and it appears that now they just do small and medium, which, 2 colors, 2 frame sizes. I think that's still pretty good. The price did go up a little bit, and I think I've seen price increases from a lot of companies. Just has to do with supply chain. And one of the things I noticed is that this has an Acera derailleur on it, and I think the actual bike is going to come with a Levio. This might have been a shortage thing. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but this is sort of a pre-review. The bike hasn't fully come out yet, and the supply chain thing is I just want to point that out. Not a big difference between these derailleurs. They're both kind of entry level, but they do a good enough job. And what's really important to me is the spread on the cassette. Again, 11 to 36, so you get a wider range. So that gives you slow or fast pedal options, going to make it easier to climb. And it was fairly easy to climb, even though we are dealing with sort of a weaker motor. I was impressed. I've criticized the Active Line motor in the past because it is rated much lower. And Bosch has so many motors. It's like Active, Active Line Plus, Performance. They got Performance Sport now, Performance CX Cargo, Performance Speed. It's just it's just a lot. It's a lot of motors and even different generations. So I was kind of like, why do they have the lowest one? And I think part of it is to give you a price point bike like we see here. I want to point out this magnet and then the sensor over here. So that's reading your rear wheel speed, but it is external. It's connected to the spokes, and so it could get bumped out of position if you ever get like a read error. Sometimes it's because the spoke is sort of bumped, or maybe you got some mud or debris on the sensor. This motor is also measuring pedal cadence and pedal torque over 1,000 times per second. And it's very responsive. It starts and stops very quickly. It feels natural. It even has shift detection. So as the torque changes because you're shifting gears, the motor is supposed to sense that and ease off a little bit so it's not going to just damage the chain or bend the teeth and stuff. I feel like it's less important on a lower torque rated motor like this, but it's still nice to have, and you're kind of getting all the fancy stuff from Bosch. Standard 170 millimeter crank arms, plastic pedals with a rubberized tread. I love the kickstand position back there. It's plenty of space, so you could pedal backwards or walk this out from your garage or a bike rack without getting pedal lock. We got quick release rear, quick release front. Very easy to do maintenance on this bike if you need to. That's one of the benefits of a mid-drive. And then the rims, they're very nice. These have reinforcement eyelets and 36 holes, so lots of spokes, black hub, black rims. The rims used to be machined sidewall. Now they're like this smooth, rounded look. Just very beautiful. And kind of classic here. 9mm axles, no through axles or big beefy fancy stuff. That kind of keeps the bike a little bit lighter. Weighs about 54.5 pounds, so not too bad considering it has steel fenders and stuff. It could be a little bit lighter, but some of the choices here are sort of money saving and reliability focus. So we're looking at a suspension fork here that is a coil fork. It's not an air fork or anything, but it's kind of narrow. You can see how they've tried to make it sleek and sort of aerodynamic. It's got hydraulic lockout and preload adjust. If you pop this cap off on the other side, there's a little dial in there and you can preload the spring based on your body weight. It even has a little cable connector here to keep the cables out of the way, and that's where the light is mounted. The light could bounce up and down a little bit more because it is on the unsprung portion of the bike. Not a huge deal. I feel like this is positioned high enough, it's not going to get blocked by the fender, and it keeps the handlebar nice and clean. So, this is pretty common. Gazelle does a really good job. These guys have been around for like 130 years. They sell 250,000 bikes a year. I mean, it's a pretty big company over in the Netherlands, and they're Royal Dutch Gazelle because the government has recognized them as being just long-standing, environmentally friendly, all these good things. So I definitely appreciate that, and I feel like in terms of the paint quality and the 2-year warranty they offer and stuff, you're getting a lot of value for $22.99. That's the price point on this bike. We've got a nice stem here that gives you some height as well as adjustability. So this is like -10 to 60 degrees. You can kind of almost angle it down a little bit or bring it really, really high and give you that nice upright Dutch sort of body position that I'm a big fan of. Actually, I have back and neck sensitivity. So riding this bike with the ergonomic grips, this nice swept back handlebar, which to me feels kind of narrow, and I've noticed a lot of their bikes do this. I think it's so that you can get through doorways easily, or maybe if you're in traffic and you're kind of squeezing between cars, you don't bump the mirror. I love the grips, ergonomic. These are Hermans. They are locking. They're just very nice. They look cool. It's kind of 2 colors with the rubber. We got this really cool branded Gazelle bell. We've got a little optical readout window here for those 9 gears, and then trigger shifters down here. I think you've got 3 steps on the low gear, so you can dump the gears if you're going towards a hill. In terms of the high gear, you have to use your pointer finger. It doesn't have a 2-way action. So for me, that's one thing I call out sometimes. I like to use the triggers and just kind of like, go through really quickly and keep my fingers on the brakes. On this one, you have to take your fingers off a little bit to switch gears. Not the end of the world. It's a decent part. Again, a Serra. It's sort of matching the Derailleur that's physically on this bike. And then, of course, the brakes. That's the last piece here. And they've, again, I'm kind of up in the hills here. I'm really pushing this bike to its limits today just to see how the Active Line motor performs. And I'm really happy to have hydraulic disc brakes versus mechanical. They're just easier to actuate, doesn't require as much hand strength. These are adjustable reach, so you can bring them in a little bit if you have smaller hands, maybe you got the small frame size. And they've given you a 180mm front rotor, so it's a really large disc brake. In the back, it's 160, which is kind of what I would expect. 180, it just gives you a mechanical advantage, and it gives you more surface area for improved cooling. dual piston calipers, sort of as you'd expect. I think that's kind of it. Some of the other things I noticed, this saddle, it felt pretty good. It's kind of like an active hybrid sort of a style. And then 27.2 millimeters on the seat post, but we do have a shim. It goes from 29.8 to 27.2. Keep that in mind if you want to do a suspension post or something, and then you'd have like a full suspension feel. It is going to add about 3 inches of height to your minimum saddle height. So if you're someone who's petite and you like to put your foot down when you stop, but still have your butt on the saddle, you know, you're just going to be raising that up a little bit. Something to keep in mind. And then back here you can see the support arms for the rack. It almost uses the fender as another support, and multiple connection points. Really nice internal cable routing on this thing. Just really beautiful color scheme. There's the badge. I turned the bike around because I wanted to show you how the battery works. We got these 2 keys, which probably wouldn't have tape on them for you. You just unlock the pack, you can slide it out, and I think you can kind of pull the key out if you want to. You don't have to leave it there dangling. Really easy to do. It's got a big handle on the bottom, 36 volts, 11 amp hours for roughly 400 watt hours. If you're someone who's like having to lift this bike up for some reason, it's always a good idea to take the battery off just to reduce the weight. And you can charge it off the bike. It's got the same charging interface right here as is built into sort of the controller interface on the rack. It's a good battery, and unfortunately I don't have the actual charger here. This is the 4 amp standard charger from Bosch, but the compact 2 amp charger that this bike comes with, it looks very similar. It's just a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, 1.2 pounds. Goes a little bit slower. It's 2 amp versus 4 amp, so it's going to take longer to charge your battery, but since this is a lower capacity battery, it should still be like, you know, 5 hours, something like that. So keep this in a cool, dry location. Try not to drop it. If it does get really cold, you're going to have a more limited range temporarily, but if you're getting this hot frequently, that can actually sort of reduce your overall capacity, and you're just not going to get as many full charge cycles. So those are my tips for you. You know, I like that the key slot is up high. You don't have to bend down real far to reach it. The charging port also pretty high up. It's on the right hand side of the bike. It's very easy to get to this thing. It's very convenient. Again, you're just spreading out the weight and you're raising weight on the bike. So rear rack batteries, you'll probably notice most companies are going towards frame mounted, and they're trying to keep the battery as low as possible. This design frees up the center of the frame, making it easy to stand over, and it's probably a little bit more affordable. Instead of having like a really custom frame, it gives you space for bottle cage bosses, which is really nice. And of course you have the rack, and then the lock and the charging point are all just high and easy to access. So I think it's a decent choice for this type of bike. With that said, I'm going to boot the bike up. This is the Bosch Purion display. It's kind of an entry level, again, from Bosch. It has a few less readouts, but I still feel like it's fairly easy to see and interact with. There are just 4 buttons: power, walk mode, plus and minus. So when it turns on, you get your current speed. It's in miles per hour right now, but you could change to kilometers per hour by holding minus and tapping the power button. And then down here, let's go all the way to the bottom. We've got a light indicator. The lights are on by default, which is nice for safety. And then a 5-bar battery indicator. For me, that's a bit of a letdown. It'd be nice if there were 10 bars, so it's more precise, or an actual percentage readout. And some of Bosch's other displays, they move in that direction. And they also give you access to the smartphone app using Bluetooth and a heart rate monitor. So if you spent a little bit more, you could have a shop help you and maybe upgrade to the Kiox or the Nion, which is like a European, like really big color LCD, very fancy. But again, this is kind of clean, it's simple, and it's doing the job for me today. So we got trip distance here. If I want to cycle through that mid section of the display, I just hold the minus button. So we got total distance, that's like your odometer. Hold minus again, we get range, and see right now there's just a minus because we're not in a level of assist, so it can't really calculate range. If we go to eco, it says 70 miles. That's pretty good. Take it all the way up to turbo, 27 miles. So you can really see a big trade-off in terms of motor power versus the range that you're going to get. And I find this to be a lot more useful than the little battery infographic. By the way, if you want to clear the trip distance, you hold plus and minus to do that. I held minus one more time, and now I'm seeing just the level of assist, and it's going to keep that there constantly. Another thing that's unique about this display is it has a micro USB port on the side, but it's not active. Like, that's just for diagnostics and software updates. The other displays, the Kiox and the Nion, and even the Intuvia, they have an active USB charging port, so you could tap into your battery and maybe charge your phone or an additional light or something like that. So again, a few trade-offs with this. It's not the end of the world. It does a pretty good job, but it's just a little less feature rich. Here's a look at that rear light and the headlight. Pretty good stuff. Let's hop on this thing and just give it a go. I'm gonna use Tour. I can hear a little bit of, but not much at all. This is one of the quietest motors from Bosch. And I tried to find a particularly quiet neighborhood so that you could actually hear it. If I take it up to turbo, now it might be even more pronounced. Super, super responsive. We got a regular size chainring here, again, 38 teeth, so there's no reduction gearing or anything. It just sort of turns on when you pedal and it stops almost immediately when you stop. However, one thing I've noticed is that it kind of carries the pedals a little bit. There's like this clunk feeling sometimes, where if I stop pedaling with my feet on the pedals, I can kind of feel the internal gearing on the motor. I mention this frequently when I review the Active Line, Active Line Plus, and Performance Line Cruise motors. I'm not sure what it is. It might be actually when you cycle the drivetrain backwards on this bike. See, it actually cycles the chain, which is nice for drivetrain maintenance and stuff. And so that might be what you're feeling. It's like it's directly connected. And so when you stop pedaling forwards, sometimes you just feel like a clunk, like the gears inside are coming to a stop. Not a big deal. I just want to point that out, tell you what I'm feeling. Over here, we can see where the chain has hit the chainstay, and it's marring it a little bit. It's leaving some grease. It might even chip the paint over time. Although, you know, Gazelle does a good job with multiple layers. They do UV testing, and they try to make everything on their bikes, you know, highly corrosion resistant, because this is a company from the Netherlands by the ocean. Again, the steel fenders were a surprise to me because steel is something that can rust in my experience. It would be nice if they had like a sticker slap guard on there. Perhaps the final version will. This is sort of slightly pre-production. It's sort of a demo model specifically for media and stuff. So again, just pointing out what I see. Okay guys, you cannot see that 38 tooth steel chainring, but it's under this nice plastic cover. And then we got the 11 to 36 tooth cassette in the rear. I'm gonna switch through the gears, pedal along in the highest level of assist, turbo, so you can hear this thing in action. Working pretty well. One of the things I want to point out is that the motor only supports up to 100 RPM rotations per minute before it kind of stalls a little bit. It doesn't offer that higher support like 120, which you get on the CX, the Speed, the Cargo motors. So this is just for kind of slower, a little bit more leisurely, you know, less noise, but also less force and lower speed support. It's relevant because sometimes you might be heading towards a hill and be shifting down in preparation for that hill, which increases your cadence. And if the motor can't keep up with you, you're going to have to slow down even more before it kicks back in. Maybe not a big deal if you're just cruising around the neighborhood. I thought this was kind of neat. We're right outside the Gazelle headquarters in Santa Cruz, and there's this parking lot with a solar panel cover, and they do a farmer's market every weekend. So just the perfect kind of thing to enjoy while you're riding around town. Easy to pull over. You don't have to worry about parking or anything. Making some friends, getting a little exercise, just really wonderful. Got it all set up. I'm just gonna ride around the parking lot a little bit. You get the third person view.
Sure thing.
This motor is known for being extremely quiet and power efficient, which is wonderful. It's going to help to make that 400 watt-hour battery last a little bit longer, get you going a little bit further. And now that they've gone from, I think, 1.75 to 2-inch wide tires, it's even more stable, even more comfortable. Okay, found a hill up here. I just want to test this thing, see how it performs. I'm in the 4th gear, wondering if I'm going to have to stand up or not. There's the stop sign. I'm doing pretty well, actually, surprisingly. So now we're actually on a hill. Made it up that part no problem, but starting from 0, I kind of want to see how this feels. Definitely working a little bit harder. But I haven't had to stand up, and I'm right back at it, climbing another steep section. Oh, this is a really steep section. Keep in mind, I'm 135 pounds. I'm in pretty good shape, about 5'9", and I am on the medium frame. They only have small and medium now, no more large. Yeah, I mean, this is impressive. I would probably shift down now if I wasn't filming. I'm gonna go ahead and pull over here for just a second. I exerted myself a little bit, but I mean, this is a really, really steep hill. So the Active Line motor has definitely proven itself here. It's pretty impressive. It doesn't feel quite as sporty. I'm not accelerating right up to 20 miles per hour, even on the flats, without a little bit more time and maybe additional pedal power from myself. But yeah, all in all, I mean, that motor it's definitely proven itself. Let's test out those brakes. There's a big hill over here. I have a feeling they're gonna work just fine. Some fancy old cars here. It's just so fun exploring. Oh, and did we hear the fender there too? A little bit of, yeah, a little bit of extra noise from the rear rack and from the fender. Here's that hill we came up earlier. You can use that single front disc brake. It's really working well with just 2 fingers. And this is incredibly steep. So I'm very happy to see hydraulic disc brakes on these cheaper bikes, because they just work so well. Well guys, it's been a fun afternoon riding around on this thing. That is the Gazelle Medeo T9 City HMB hybrid mid-drive Bosch. Again, really impressed that they've maintained a lot of the great features and kept the good price. 2 frame sizes, 2 colors. This light olive is really nice, but the mallard blue is also really cool. Hydraulic disc brakes, all this for $22.99, a bike that comes in 2 sizes. Even though it used to come in 3 and we used to have this cafe lock in the rear, I do see how they've maintained or even improved some of the parts on this bike. So anyway, the full written review is back at ElectricBikeReview.com. I've got a cool comparison tool so you can look at other sort of affordably priced bikes and see what the pros and cons are, as well as a forum so you could see what actual owners are saying. For me, this bike has just, I've been riding around for a day or so and it's brand new. It's holding up well. I think Gazelle has a good reputation, but my goal is to give you as much support as possible to find the right bike for your lifestyle and then maintain that bike. Again, I love the reflective sidewalls on this, the puncture resistant tires. It feels like it's a really complete package, even though it's sort of a rack mounted kind of old school battery configuration versus the new really integrated ones. I feel like there's a lot of utility here. I'm impressed. I'm kind of a price sensitive person myself, so whenever I see a big company with high quality components offering something at value price, $22.99 like this, I'm always impressed. So I love you guys. I hope you have fun out there, ride safe, and we'll see you on the next one.